Welcome to my year in review. I thought I would do a little overview and recap of what I've read in 2024, what my most rated genre has been, how many pages I've read this year, what I've enjoyed most, what I haven't enjoyed most. So here are my thoughts for 2024. In 2024, I have read the most books that I've ever read. So I have at this current moment read 72 books. In 2023, I only read 22 books. In 2022, I read 29 books. In 2021, I read 30 books. So this is by far my biggest year of books yet. Last year, in 2023, I read just over 5,000 pages, which does not seem like a lot at all because this year I read about 22,000 pages worth of books, which is mind-blowing when you think of it. Most books that I read were about 300 pages, which, to be honest, I think that most books should be 300 pages. I really struggle to read anything past 300 pages, and so I feel like that is the sweet spot, at least for me. The shortest book that I read this year was Did the Devil Make Me Do It? And that was only 80 pages long, whereas the longest book that I read this year, this is kind of cheating because this book has 66 books within it, but is none other than the Bible. This year, I read the Bible cover to cover for the first time ever. Apparently, the Bible has 1,213 pages in it. I worked my way through this very slowly this year. My average rating for my books this year was 3.6 stars. I feel like this makes sense. I didn't rate a lot of books 5 stars. I feel like it has to be a very, 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 very good book to rate it 5 stars. When I kind of don't love a book, but I don't hate it, it kind of sits at the 3-star mark. So I'm not surprised at all by this. Talking about 5-star reads though, there were 3 particular books in my mind that stood out to me this year. One was a book that I've just raved and raved and raved about to all of my friends and family members. And this is a book called Tell Me Lies by J.P. Pomeray. Now, a little backstory to this book. Sometimes when you go into bookstores, they'll have like mystery books for date ideas or to buy for people. My friend actually picked this out. We both didn't know what it was about, who the author was, like we didn't know the title. And so, not gonna lie, I opened this book up, looked at it, looked at Goodreads, there weren't loads of reviews, and I was a bit skeptical, but this was, I think, one of my first 5-star fiction reads, at least in a long time. There are so many twists and turns. It was an absolute page turner. It's not a big book at all, so you can absolutely fly through this. So this was definitely one of my top rated books for 2024. Another one that I really loved for 2024, this was my top audiobook, was Lola in the Mirror by Trent Dalton. I listened to this one and it was a pretty big listen, big book, but I had to buy a physical copy of the book because it was so beautiful. The lines that were in this, the poetic writing that Trent Dalton has, it was honestly just a beautiful read, a beautiful story about this girl and her mum who have been on the run from police for 16 years, I think. It basically just goes to show what her life is on the streets and her really tough upbringing, but then all the beauty that comes with the friendships that she finds. And yeah, I really, really loved this book. Another one that I really loved that I think would be my pick for most weird plot that I've read, and I don't have a physical copy on me, but is Here One Moment by Leanne Moriarty. Such an odd plot about this woman who is on a plane and predicts the age and cause of death for all of the passengers on the plane, and then it follows their lives, and it's really interesting. That was another 5-star book for me this year. The top genre or the top type of book that I read this year were fiction books. 40 out of 71 books were fiction, which means that I read about 56% of fiction books this year. The other top contender of genre of books were Christian books. So I read 25 Christian books this year, which brings it to about 35% of the books that I read were Christian books. And then the rest were non-fiction or memoirs or psychology books as well that I read. My top rated memoir was Dolly Alderton's Everything I Know About Love. I am obsessed with this book. I love it so much. It is so relatable as a 20-something-year-old and just figuring out life and being single, and it just took me back. It was so nostalgic. I absolutely loved this memoir to bits. And I would say that my top rated Christian book for this year was The Prodigal God by Tim Keller. It was so beautiful. It reminded me of the heart of God, what God is like, and reminded me just as his child how deeply loved I am by him despite all my shortcomings. That was definitely my top rated Christian book of this year. There were 4 authors this year that particularly stood out when I was going through my year in books. I read at least 3 books of these authors. The first one was Dolly Alderton. Hers was a mixed bag. I loved Everything I Know About Love. I really didn't love Good Material, and I really liked Ghosts, so a bit of a mixed bag with Dolly Alderton. Emily Henry was the next one. Funny Story I absolutely adored. The other 2 were kind of meh. Lisa Jewell was the next one. None of This Is True was one that I absolutely adored. The other 2 likewise were a bit meh. And then Beth O'Leary was the 4th author that I read 3 of her books, and again, they were nothing groundbreaking. So I would say that my top author this year would be Dolly Alderton. There were 3 books this year that I DNF'd. One was Letters from the Past by Erica James. I got about 100 pages in and just couldn't finish it. It was the end of the year and I just wasn't up for reading a book that I didn't love from the get-go. I can see myself loving it if I stuck with it, but I just didn't want to stick with it. You Were Here by David Nichols was another book that I DNF'd. I did not like this book at all. I actually think I got almost to the end of this book and didn't finish because it just got so boring. Yeah, I just didn't love the plot, didn't love the characters. It was just really boring. And the last book that I DNF'd were All Fours by Miranda July. It was weird. It was gross. I was not for it at all. I only got like 50 pages or maybe 40 pages and just put it down because it was just gross and I could tell I wouldn't love it. And now the books that I read but really disliked was Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. This might be a shock to many of you because I know there are so many people who love this book. I just found it really slow, really boring. I think that Anne Patchett's writing is really lovely. I did like the writing, but it was just so dull. I wasn't here for the storyline. It was set during COVID and it was just a bit unbelievable. There were these daughters who wanted to know their mother's story, and so it would go back in time talking about her mum's life and how she grew up. Another one that I really disliked was The Other Side of Beautiful by Kim Locke. Again, so dull. Nothing happened in the book. It was just a girl with a dog on a road trip, which sounds really nice. It wasn't. A lot of these books were romance or crime books that I enjoyed, but one that I read this year for the first time in the fantasy genre was Harry Potter. Now, I have been asked by so many friends to read this book. They've been trying to convince me to read this book for years and years and years and watch the movies, and I just haven't. So this year was the year that I finally read Harry Potter, and I'm not big into fantasy books, so this was my first deep dive into the life of fantasy. I did enjoy it. I really was transported into the world of Hogwarts. However, I just don't think fantasy is for me. Yeah, the unicorns and the broomsticks and the magic just isn't believable, and so I just don't really buy into it and love it. However, for 2025, I would really love to read more fantasy books and get more into that genre, so watch this space. I think for 2025, my goal is going to be to read 80 books. I know that that's not much more than I read, but I don't want to shoot too high for the stars because I want it to be something that's achievable, and I feel like if I read 71 books this year, then 80 is doable next year. I really, like I said, want to get into the fantasy genre a bit more. There are a few authors that I really want to read in 2025 that I haven't read before. Stephen King is one of them. I've just bought one of his books. It looks really thick, but I'm really keen to give that a read in 2025. Abby Jimenez, I think is how you say her name. I have seen all over my Goodreads feed. I have not yet read one of her books, but she has a lot of top rated books that I'd love to read more of next year. And Kristen Hanna is one that I have seen so much of and just haven't gotten around to picking up any of her books. So I think those are kind of my 3 authors that I'd love to read next year in 2025. The Wedding Forecast by Nina Kenwood is one that I am really, really, really wanting to borrow from the library and read. Unnecessary Drama, her other book, is one that I have absolutely adored, so I'm sure I'm going to love this new book of hers too. Some new releases in 2025 that I'm keen to read is Emily Henry's new book called Great Big Beautiful Life. Abby Jimenez is coming out with a new book called Say You'll Remember Me. Has a Taylor Swift vibe to it in the title. I don't know if it will have anything to do with Taylor Swift, but I'm keen to read that one. Ali Hazelwood is coming out with another book called Deep End. I've never read any of Ali Hazelwood's books, but I have seen her around, so I'm very keen to give that one a read. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, and she's coming out with a book called Atmosphere. I cannot wait to get my hands on that. She has been another author that I have just adored. I think last year in 2023 I discovered her, so I'm keen to get back into more of her books. The Love Haters by Catherine Center is coming out. Catherine Center has been one author that I've been meaning to read, and so maybe this will be a book that I can read of hers next year. And that is it for my 2024 Goodreads Wrapped. It has been a wonderful year of books. I'm excited to read even more next year and to hopefully expand my horizons. So I will see you in the new year. Have a wonderful Christmas and New Year, and thanks for watching.